China is increasing its diplomatic and economic involvement in the Middle East, while the United States has decreased its presence there. In fact, China has maintained strong relations with Iran while also striking significant deals with old U.S. friends like Saudi Arabia. And just recently, China has revealed its insane petroleum partnership with the Middle East that is set to destroy the U.S. economy and the petrodollar. Hey guys, before we dive into this, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to InvestoPass YouTube channel. Let's get started. Oil exports to China were raised this month by several countries, including Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and others. As a result, Russia has been able to increase its foothold in the market and invaded in Ukraine. Middle Eastern oil exporters pumped about 4 million barrels of petroleum daily to China in October. And since not all tankers have disclosed their ultimate destinations, the total may be amended upwards. Russia's likewise in a rush this year to find new destinations outside Europe to sell its petroleum. And because it invaded Ukraine, the European Union's 27 member states have decided to prohibit any maritime trade with the country. Luckily, the country has a friend, China. Now, according to customs figures, China's total crude imports from Russia have increased by roughly 20% since April. So far, data for October tanker movements indicates a rate of roughly 38 million barrels per day, and is an increase of almost 491,000 barrels per day compared to September. After the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries and its partners promised to reduce oil output, oil prices increased modestly, and as sanctions from the West increased the pressure on the OPEC Plus coalition, Russia, a key member of the alliance, increased exports from its Far East. In addition, it has begun transporting Arctic oil to China via the Northern Sea route. It's no secret that China has surpassed the United States as Saudi Arabia's largest oil customer in recent years. And according to estimates, Saudi Arabia exported $95.7 billion of oil in 2020. The United States imported just $6.59 billion from China, while Chinese imports totaled $24.7 billion. According to reports, Chinese investment in Saudi Arabia under the Belt and Road Initiative reached $43.47 billion in 2021. Now, the Saudi government has decided to begin investing in Chinese firms. In fact, the agreement between Aramco and Chinese oil firms is worth $10 billion. Moreover, discussions about the petroleum trade have made the news. As it stands, no other market can compete with the breadth and liquidity of the $13.4 trillion euro-dollar market, or the $25 trillion U.S. Treasury market. However, things may alter in the not-so-distant future. The dollar has recently gained due to rising interest rates. Because of this, import costs in developing nations have skyrocketed, contributing to the global debt crisis. Now, at the very least, this might cause a rethinking of the world's reliance on the U.S. dollar, making China's trade partners more open to dealing in yuan. Threat to U.S. dollar dominance. This adds another layer of danger to the situation the United States dollar is in. Now, the story begins in 1944, when Europe is at its most dangerous point during World War II. In response to these concerns, 44 nations established the Bretton Woods system during a meeting in New Hampshire. The arrangement required all nations to peg their currencies to the U.S. dollar while also linking the value of the currency to gold. They reasoned that stabilizing on a gold standard would stabilize the economy. Fortunately, the U.S. now has a firm grip over international commerce thanks to the terms of that agreement. However, the United States experienced a gold shortage in the early 1970s, and that system eventually failed. The swelling and weakening of the petrodollar after that, countries worldwide quickly lost faith in the U.S. dollar, tumbling its value midway through the 1970s. Then, President Richard Nixon agreed with the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries to conduct all oil commerce in dollars in exchange for OPEC's help in the military arena. The result was the emergence of the petrodollar, and a fourfold increase in oil prices since then. The U.S. dollar has enjoyed unparalleled status as the world's primary reserve currency. In addition, the dollar's strength in the global oil trade was bolstered by agreements with Saudi Arabia and the rest of the Middle East. The dollar's dominance in the oil and gas futures market has helped solidify America's role as a world leader. However, even though the euro emerged as a serious competitor in the 1990s, dollar-based financing remains successful. Holding U.S. treasuries and amassing enormous dollar reserves was the only option for developing economies like China and Russia to protect themselves from currency fluctuations. And even as divisive figures like Saddam Hussein of Iraq and Muammar Gaddafi of Libya worked tirelessly to undermine the petrodollar. Unfortunately, such efforts resulted in an invasion an assassination, and the wholesale of innocent people. Now, the Saudi royal family has expressed growing discontent with Vice President Joe Biden's Middle East policies. In fact, Riyadh was irritated by Biden's decision to stop backing the Saudi military action in Yemen. Saudi Arabia is more worried due to recent Houthi attacks on oil installations and Biden's efforts to restore the nuclear deal with Iran. The Saudi government is also worried that the United States is going back on its long-standing security commitments to the House of Saud. China's shifting oil policy and its foreign policy effects going back. In May alone, China increased its purchases of crude oil from Russia. It's an excellent way to make up for the money lost when Western countries cut back on Russian energy imports in response to the invasion of Ukraine. As a result of the increase, Russia has surpassed Saudi Arabia as China's top oil supplier due to Western sanctions against Russia's energy exports. An estimated 8.42 million tons of oil were imported from Russia by the world's second-largest economy in January, which up 55% from December of the previous year. Now, instead of publicly condemning Moscow's conflict, Beijing has instead exacted economic advantages from its isolated neighbor. It brought in 7.82 million tons of oil in May from Saudi Arabia, and now China has increased its purchases of Russian energy supplies by almost $1 billion, bringing the total to $7.47 billion. Now, 4 months into the conflict in Ukraine, new customs statistics show that customers in the US and EU have either completely avoided Russian energy imports or pledged to significantly reduce their purchases in the coming months. Some of those losses are being slowed down because of the demand from Asia, particularly China and India. Comparing the months of March through May of this year to the same months last year, India's purchases of Russian oil increased sixfold. However, research company Rystad Energy found that China's imports increased by a factor of 3 during that period. Now, Russia's primary crude oil export market to China began in 2016. Chinese President Xi Jinping met with his Russian President Vladimir Putin in Beijing just days before Moscow invaded Ukraine. There, they stated that their relationship would have no limitations. Chinese demand hasn't picked up much due to COVID regulations. And after the greatest pandemic in the country since the beginning of the pandemic, localities have begun to relax their restrictions in recent weeks, leading to some improvement. Because of this, issues with the supply chain have decreased, and manufacturing output has increased. Now, while global fuel imports decreased, Beijing's purchases of Russian liquefied natural gas increased 54% from a year ago to 397,000 tons. China has even been accused of acting as a diplomatic shield for Russia by condemning Western sanctions on Russia and Western military shipments to Ukraine. And once sworn enemies during the Cold War era, Beijing and Moscow have increased their collaboration in recent years. They even opened the first road bridge in the region, which connects a city in eastern Russia to one in northern China. Now, during a phone discussion recently, she told Putin that China fully supports Russia's sovereignty and security in response to unlawful Western sanctions. The Kremlin said the two countries had decided to increase their economic cooperation. The West has imposed unprecedented sanctions on the country as punishment for Russia's aggression towards Ukraine. And because of this, Moscow has been scrambling to replace the foreign companies that departed Russia due to the invasion with new markets and suppliers. In late May, the European Union's member states unanimously approved sanctions that would end the bloc's reliance on Russian energy. And even though America has cut off all Russian oil shipments, several European countries are highly reliant on them. Putin's administration makes a lot of money off of energy exports, and Western nations are attempting to cut off Moscow's resources so it can't keep fighting. So what do you think of China's new partnership and move towards Russia, Saudi, and Iran? Do you think the US economy will greatly suffer because of this? Let me know what you think in the comment section below. And that's it for this video. Thanks for watching till the end. Before you go, make sure to like and subscribe, and click the notification bell to trigger YouTube's algorithm, and see more of our videos on your homepage. Thanks for watching, and see you next time for more interesting videos like this.